Here we are this evening at the African American Heritage Museum and Cultural Center. Currently exiled from the building it rightfully owns, therefore having to operate out of a series of tents in front of that building. Inside this tent, one can meet museum co-founder Omari Tahir. Omari Tahir, what exactly happened here in this place on June 4th, 1998?
Well, I think I had spent the night here, and that my niece's son had spent the night here too. So I went to take him, I think, to school. And when I came back, the place was yellow taped off, and there was so I parked and walked up to Officer Knight, who was the community service officer, and asked him what was going on. So he tells me to stand right there, and he calls Harry Bailey, who was leading the raid.
Now, who was Harry Bailey at that time?
Harry Bailey was Lieutenant Harry Bailey, and he was the person that was kind of in charge of this area. He's a black officer.
So he calls Harry Bailey.
Harry Bailey tells him to put the handcuffs on me, and he brings me to the gate. Man, I see this armored personnel carrier. It's people with black suits on, uniforms on, with M16s. They jumping out of the back of this armored personnel carrier, and then there was another truck that had a bunch of officers in it, and they ran over to the big main building and was batter-rabbing the door and throwing these big cans of tear gas.
Now, when you say main building,
Yeah.
how many buildings were there at that time?
There were three. They were the main brick building that they had strung lights and they were doing some work on. Supposed to be moving toward their museum and culture center. Then they had two big portables that were construction portables for the completion of the I-90 freeway. And the deal we had worked out with the Washington State Department of Transportation, that they would cut the playground off from the land that the building was on, so we could negotiate the lowest price for the building, the brick building, which turned out to be $379,000. Then he said in 7 years, when they finished the I-90 project, they would surplus the playground back to us. So we'd basically get the playground for free. And then when that was time to happen, then the city claimed that they owned the playground and that it was going to be a park. So when we did the research, no, the city didn't purchase the playground. They were leasing it because everybody's trying to figure out how to steal from the federal government. So if they purchased it, the money would go to the Federal Highway Department that was putting up the money for the completion of I-90. So they locked me up in the South Precinct, and then Harry Bailey and Diaz came, and they were saying that, oh, we were against this, but prior to that, we had a big meeting in Larry Gossett's office.
You had a meeting in Larry Gossett's
Larry
office.
Gossett's office. The probation officer that was paying his kids $5 an hour just to be up here around us, because one of his worst kids was up here, and we got to talking to him. and he was bragging to his probation officer, and so we looked up, and his probation officer was here. He was a Nigerian, and he said, well, if you could reach him, because I ain't never heard him talk positive about a program, that you can reach a lot of my, because he's my worst one. So he was, so he was there. Harry Bailey was there. Said they knew where we were, you know, and we was, you know, working with the kids and stuff. And who else was there? So Larry said nothing would happen without his approval.
And then something
And then we looked
very much
up
did happen.
and all these. Oh, Larry's a snake.
Now, you had 3 buildings. Can you run down for me, building by building, what programs you had going on in each building?
Well, we had one building where there was the main meeting place. They had the meeting table. Then in the other building, we had set up, I was going back and forth to Africa and bringing stuff. And then I was down at Goodwill one day, and they had all these beautiful display cases, you know. So I bought all of them. There's about 6 of them. 2 of them, I think 2 or 3 of them, like the jury laid out, you know, cases. And then I think there was 1 or 2 with the stand-up, you know. So I had bought some real nice red cushion chairs, you know. Basically, we had a nice little museum set up. So when they did the raid, they put the stuff in storage. And then the Bob clique was not paying on the storage. So we would start paying on the storage, and then the storage company said, even though we were paying on it, we couldn't get the stuff out of storage. So then we decided we would let it go to, you know, auction. And since we knew what it was, the value of it, we had the money to pay for it. So when that happened, then Vivian Phillips, who the mayor had appointed in charge of the museum project. And I always liked Vivian, so her first meeting I didn't go. And then she sent word that if I wanted to be involved in the museum project, I had to come through her. I'm like, oh. So I didn't speak to her for about, you know, 10 years, you know. I'm like, what? You out of your mind?
So what happened at the auction? What did Vivian do?
Vivian blocked the auction.
She blocked the auction?
Yeah.
How
for
did
the
she
sale of our stuff?
How did she do that?
She just called the storage paper and told them don't sell that unit.
So what happened to the stuff?
Then when it came up for auction again, they wouldn't let us bid on it.
The auctioneers wouldn't let you bid on it?
Wouldn't let us bid on it.
So what happened to it? What happened to all of that museum material?
Somebody else got it.
Wow. So that was the contents of all 3 buildings?
Yeah. So then they told me to file a theft charge at the police. So when I went and tried to file the theft charge, the lady at the desk came out. Then she went and talked to Harry Bailey, and Harry Bailey told her not to let us file the charge on it because we had listed all the stuff that was in the portables.
And this was stuff that they seized by means of a battering ram, breaking down all 3 doors?
No, they went into well, I don't know how they got into the portables, but they batter rammed the door over here and was throwing the tear gas in.
Now, what programming was actually going on inside the main brick building itself at that time?
They had strung lights, and they were working on toward the museum.
So you had museum materials stored in there as well.
Mm-hmm. I had an 8,000 custom design Hammond organ. I had a bookshop, so I had some leftover black I had black magazines and newspapers coming from all over the world. So the extras I had, and then I had a bunch of old fax newspapers and medium newspapers. So I think all that stuff is down in the basement because one of the ladies that come by here said the fake Namscam Museum hired her to do a survey of the museum, and it was so negative because she said, I guess the magazines and newspapers that I had is stored somewhere not professionally down in the basement, and I don't know what they did with my organ, and so I mean it's just ridiculous. And then over on this side of the building there was an entrance, and it was nice little stage like that.
You're talking about the
north
the north facing side.
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
building.
yeah. So it was like a nice little, you know, because we had a event for what's his name? Not Bob Wilmot, but the Native American that's been locked up for so long.
Leonard Peltier.
Leonard Peltier. So we had a program for Leonard, but if you go over there now, they done took the stairs off and planted some big trees to block the green, which is basically a soccer field.
So you're saying the north side of the building actually used to be set up in the shape of an auditorium.
Yeah.
Where you could easily do outdoor events that would be appropriate at a museum and cultural center. When did that architecture get changed?
When the Urban League got in control of the building, and so they're sabotaging everything so that it's dysfunctional for black peoples to have an event here. And then mayor's final report said no apartments, and had a list of all the things that were supposed to go in here: recording studio, art studio, you know, because ours was the first active museum where you just didn't handcuff kids, bring them in, show them this, show them that, use them for a head count, then send them out the door. They could actually look at art. Then they had places where they could go and do art, make art. Same way with music. So they had a recording studio, but they stole the recording studio from us and put it in the Rainier Vista development down on Rainier. So, I mean, they just basically didn't want us to have a functioning culture. And then the number one thing they didn't like about our museum was we had one wing on how we Africans deal with Asia, how we black folks deal with Asians. We had another wing on how we dealt with the Native Americans, another wing on how we deal with Europeans, another wing on how we dealt with Africans, and then the wing that we dealt with, African Americans, because black folks have always interacted with the rest of the world. They didn't want that. They wanted El Central over there separate. They wanted Daybreak Star over here separate. Now they got Nordic Heritage separate, and they don't work together. The progressives don't work together. So when El Central got their foot in the door, they turned their back on us. So.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I have been to all those facilities, and they are magnificent facilities. And the African American community should have one comparable to that.
And we were the first ones to raise
a city that claims to be the Emerald City and the gateway to the Pacific.
We were the ones that raised the issue and knocked the door down for everybody, and everybody ran over us and forgot about us.
Brother Omari Tahir,
yes.
Thank you for this interview.
Okay.